Hi Year 10, it's Mrs Tompkins here, and this is the flipped classroom presentation on The River God by Stevie Smith. So what I want you to think about first of all is how you're going to use this resource. Remember, we're flipping the classroom around, so you're doing the homework in school and you're doing all the kind of research and the information finding at home. So I want you to gather as much information and knowledge as you can about this poem, using this resource and using the internet and your own research. And what I'm looking for is for you to make notes and bring them into lesson, depending on what I've asked you to do, and also any questions that you might have about the poem, anything you don't understand, bring that into the lesson as well. So the idea is you can rewind and pause this, you can come back to it, you can look at it on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, wherever and whenever it's convenient for you, as long as you get it done by the time you come back into the lesson and you're ready to actually do the sort of homework assignment. Before you go any further, make sure you've listened to the poem. There are loads of readings online. There's a really good one on the BBC GCSE Bite-Size website where it's been read by a man. That one's really good. And if you look on YouTube or you Google it, you can find some other ones and some other students' interpretations of readings of the poem. So go and listen to The River God before you look at this presentation any further. In this presentation, I'm going to look at the poem, and it's going to be a kind of initial analysis. And I'm going to look at what the examiners are actually thinking about and want you to look for. So one of the key things, as you know, is the effect on the reader. Every reader interprets a poem in a different way, and that's what a poem is there for. It's there to create a particular meaning for everybody in different ways. So we're going to look at the multiple interpretations, the personal response to the poem, and you're going to think about how you might respond to it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the structure and get you thinking about that. Then look more closely at the language and think about this idea of a voice in the poem. Remember, all your poems have character and voice. The voice is really important. So those are some of the key things you think about with all these poems, and I'm going to try and focus on some of those so you've got a starting point to think about. So if we look first of all at structure, I'm going to think a little bit about the way in which the structure reflects the idea of a river. The first thing we notice about the poem is that it's all one stanza, and this might suggest to the reader the sense of a river that keeps flowing without any breaks in it. So the shape of the poem itself could be like a river. The varied line lengths, some are long, some are short, again, perhaps make the reader think of the way a river naturally meanders along the riverbank. Or if the poem was turned on its side, if you think about these things a bit more abstractly, if it's turned on its side, it might look like the reeds growing at the side of the river, or you might have a different interpretation of that. It might look like the ripples of the water. So if we go back to the poem that around again, if you look at more at the form of the poem, you'll notice the rhyming couplets nearly all the way through. Okay, swimming, women, fools, rules. And again, that creates a bit of a consistency to the poem, which the reader could interpret as being a bit like a river, sort of rippling and flowing consistently. There's also the use of enjambment, the lines flowing on one to the next. So I brought her down here to be my beautiful dear. Lots of enjambment there. Again, flowing. It's not stopping at the end of each line. So there's various ways, and I've just given you a few there, that you could interpret this poem to be like a river. And I want you to think about how the structure might make you think about different aspects of the poem once we've analysed it and we've read it. Okay. So a little look at the structure there. Now I'm going to look a bit more closely at some of the language. Okay, we notice immediately the poem is written in the first person, which we can see from the use of the personal pronouns I and my, which I've highlighted in red. This also tells us the poem is a dramatic monologue. It's the thoughts and feelings of the character of the poem. So we get quite a personal insight into how the river god is feeling. Immediately we get the sense at the beginning the voice is almost protesting against a claim that's been made against him. And he's almost replying to someone in these first two lines. I may be smelly, I may be old. So you might want to think about what might have been said before the poem began. Why is he sort of trying to stand up for himself? In the third line, the river god says that he blesses the fish that float by, which immediately creates connotations of religion and the idea of the river being personified as a god. The alliteration used in fish float creates quite a soft sound, and this contrasts to the alliteration in the line before it, where we have rough and reedy. So, we're seeing sort of two different sides to this river god already, but we see something quite powerful in the fact that he's sort of blessing the fish as they pass by. This kind of power and also danger that the river holds is emphasised in the line, "I can drown the fools," which I've highlighted there in pink. This reminds us of the power of nature. If you think about destruction that flooding and tsunamis and things like that can create, that shows us how powerful water is. And we might start to think about the way that water and rivers, they might look calm and pretty and just meander along like we saw in the structure of the poem, but actually they can be dangerous, and we know that all too well. So what he's reminding us of is not to break the rules. So here, I drown the fools who bathe too close to the weir, contrary to the rules. So it's a bit of a warning, reminding us of the power of nature, but yet there's quite a human quality to this river god, as he seems to watch people drowning in an almost voyeuristic way. And he says, "And they take a long time drowning." So although he's powerful, and we expect a god to be good and powerful, he's actually quite sort of angry and is watching people drowning in the river. And we realise how easy it is for the river to overpower and drown somebody. And he even refers to it as clowning. Drowning there rhymes with the clowning, shows quite a sinister side to the river, the river god. And he almost enjoys drowning people that bathe in the river. Now the idea of clowning is continued in this orange bit here, this "Hi ye, yippity yap, merrily I've flown." There's a kind of sing-song, childlike sort of sound to that line, and it contrasts with this horrible idea of death and drowning, perhaps suggesting, maybe, as an interpretation, that the river god doesn't realise the impact of his own power. He knows he's powerful, but doesn't realise that, people are dying, people are drowning. And he again warns us in the next line that although he's old and foul, he has plenty of go. This reminds us maybe that we shouldn't underestimate what seems to be a harmless, calm river on the surface, as you never know what might lurk beneath. Right, if we look a little bit further at the second half of the poem, the voice continues by letting us into one of his secrets, telling us a cautionary tale about a lady who was too bold and who drowned, and he has brought her down here so he can keep her for himself. We get the sense that perhaps he was jealous of her beauty and her mortality, and that he wants to keep her beauty for himself at the bottom of this river. The word beautiful there is repeated 4 times. In fact, it's probably one of the most repeated words in the poem. Yet it's not something we would associate with this smelly old river, but he describes the river itself as beautiful and the woman as beautiful. We get a sense of jealousy. Was he jealous of this woman? Did he want her to be nowhere but kept underwater, kept with him? And he sort of wishes that people could see below the exterior of the surface of the water and see what's really there, what's really beneath, and how powerful he really is. There's a very creepy and eerie sense to the way he wants to keep her beauty underwater. He wants to wash away the fear from her face, which makes us sort of imagine a poor drowned woman lying at the bottom of this river. But again, the chatty sing-song language of "hi" and "oh" at the beginning of lines reminds us of the human qualities of this otherwise powerful, godlike river. Therefore, the character of the river god is quite a complex one. He is powerful and quite violent at times, but he also seems trapped and lonely. Those words there, "go" and "now," that are left isolated at the beginning of each line, remind us of this kind of trapped quality that he has. And although he's old, we get the sense that, like a god, he is immortal, and therefore is isolated and has become cruel and frustrated. However, the repetition of beautiful, as I've said, shows that he is capable of love, and he has loved in the past. but now has to drown a woman in order to own her. This reminds us of the idea of making a sacrifice to a god, and perhaps this woman is more a sacrifice to this powerful god rather than actually someone that has another. Therefore, the character of the river god reminds us of several aspects. He reminds us that what you see isn't always what you get. So what you see in a calm river isn't always what lies beneath. And we need to look beyond the obvious. It also reminds us of the link between humanity and nature, and perhaps that we need to respect the rules of nature in order for nature to respect us. It also makes us think about the power of love, and that despite his cruel and evil characteristics, ultimately he just wants somebody that he can love. That's a very human quality. Right, that's the little mini kind of analysis I'm going to give you at the moment. I've put some of the key words here, so think about those, and if you're not sure what they mean or how they link to the poem, you might want to think about that before you come into the lesson. And feel free to go back and look at this again, make the notes, research the poem, come to the lesson with as much information as you can about this poem.